Do 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 do. Yabba dabba do. Flipping lunatics. Ugh. Feels like it's been, I don't know, a year since I've been live. I know it's not been that long, but it feels like that long. Dave Smith, how are you, mate? Calvin Jones. Tell you what, Calv, John, Matt Ryan, even Kurt, I see you. First on the chat today, you were, Dave, yeah? Hey up, Adam, Howard Morris, sorry, BBC Collectibles, Reese. Oh, it's going fast again. Omar, my old mate. Are you guys genuinely just permanently on YouTube? For it to be able to come up that fast, it must be flipping. I don't know if it's just me. I watch YouTube, but I only go on there sort of like I probably get about half an hour to an hour a day. But it just seems whenever I go live, like Calvin, are you always on YouTube permanently just watching videos, mate? I wish I could do it. I wish I had the time. In my house, all I get is reality TV shows and Coronation Street and stuff with the missus. Dave Smith, unusual for you to do a weekday. I know, but it's a bit of a funny one because I'm going to Slovakia tomorrow, so it's sort of like a weekend for me because I'm going to be away. Only for you, pal. Cheers. John Fenwick, pretty much always on YouTube, me, mate. Fair play. Sasquatch. Kirk, oh, why is it doing this? Kirk, what's the best scrim? It all seems crap lately. The yellow scrim by Easy Mix, it's quite wide. That seems quite good. Little tip for you. Get all your rolls of scrim and put them on the dashboard of your van. Every roll of scrim, dashboard of your van. By the time you get to work, it will have warmed up and the glue goes lovely and tacky and then it stays up. Because there's nothing worse than putting scrims up in the winter and they all fall down because it's cold. Hey Kirk, best render for DIYers. I would probably go with something like HP12 base coat, depending on what you want to do with it. It rubs up quite easy. It doesn't really sag that much, and you haven't got to think about mixing. It's already pre-bagged. You just add water and away you go. I mean, it's a base coat, but there's nothing stopping you from using it, you know, as a top coat as well. If you're gonna, I don't know what your plan is. You could rub it up smooth. You can put a brush pattern in it. It's gonna be easier to use than sand and cement, but not as difficult as a monocouche render. Calvin Jones, yep. Matthew Pickup, thank you for that. You did for that guy. Respect. Oh yeah. I know what you're on about with the old boy that got ripped off. That was actually months and months ago. That, but until the fella had gone to court, I couldn't release that video because it could potentially interfere with his court case, you know. So couldn't let sort of anyone know about that until he's gone now. He's in jail. So. Teddy Dennehy, do you have any back problems for plastering? Yeah, I get a little bit just above me butt cheek, you know, sort of like where your belt sits. That's the best way of describing what it is. You know, where your belt goes on your jeans, on your back, your lower back. Like if I've been working all day, then I get like a throb just where that belt is, and if you put pressure on it, it takes it away. And I know that happens with a few guys because I remember someone telling me that they put a tennis ball when they're driving home. They shove a tennis ball behind them and push back on it as they're driving, and it just makes it like takes the pain away. And yeah, that happens to me a little bit. So Callum Norman, how are you getting on, Kurt, mate? Legend. I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. I've been busy. I've been non-stop, to be fair. Mark Newton, first question: what's the next big thing in plastering? You rate cork plaster for its insulation benefits. The next big thing in plastering. Like the cork plaster, I know about as much as that as you guys. I've been using it, and it seems wonderful. But I'm not an expert in the field, and I don't profess to be. But I've been using it, and I think the stuff's fantastic so far. So we will see, won't we? If it lives up to its expectations, which I believe it will, I think it's me an absolute game changer. But time will tell, so we will see. Adam Welln. I went to press a notification and yours popped up the exact time I was pressing. Top man. John Fenwick, knowledge is power, man. 100%. Donny De Silva, dude, why do you trowel from right to left when rendering? So the reason being, for me, when I was taught, was it's easier to build up because if you're right-handed, as you come up, the trowel naturally sweeps to the right. Now, if you're working from the right, I know it's the opposite way around for you who's watching this. If you're working from the right to the left, every time your trowel sweeps up, it ties into the previous stroke. Now, you try building up any thickness and going off into nothing, and what you'll find is you drop a load. So it's easier to build up thickness when you're tying in to what you've already got on. That for me is the reason why I do it like that. There's some fellas that don't care. They're like, no, I go from left to right with everything. And that's ultimately, look, it doesn't really matter. I find if I go from left to right, I drop more than if I go from right to left when I'm applying render, when I'm trying to build up thickness. So I just do it because I drop less. But a lot of old school plasterers used to sort of like, that would be like a secret code for them. They'd say, look, you can tell if someone's any good. Watch when they're rendering, if they come the opposite way. If they don't, then they're just chances, That was like the old school way of thinking about it. So, where am I up to here? Let's skip to the bottom. Does that all the time. Okay. Chris Brindle. Sorry, guys, if I missed a load of comments out, sorry. I'm going to try and just read so it's not boring for you guys watching me going, trying to read the comments. So I'm just going to just blast through them. When I scroll down, it shoots straight to the bottom, as we already know. So if I miss your comments out, I haven't done it on purpose. All right. Chris Brindle, 33. No, I'm 37 and just doing my level 1 at college at night. Okay, mate, good man. Chris Freestone, you guys, mud way different than here in Canada. Yeah. That's the only thing about my YouTube channel. It is very unique for the UK. So if I was in any other trade, I'd probably have a lot bigger audience. Well, I'm saying that without trying to sound big-headed, but hear me out. Like joinery literally is joinery or carpentry. It's like across the board, isn't it? If you're a bricklayer in the UK, then you can survive as a bricklayer in the States. Bricklaying's bricklaying. It's like a lot of trades are just universal. Whereas when it comes to watching British people plaster, it's completely different to the materials that you use anywhere else in the world. So my audience sort of is more focused in the UK, like, because you just can't get the plaster that we use anywhere else in the world. So James JB26. Hi Kirk, do you think it's time for a different brand of gypsum finishing plaster? Fine BG has the market command and multi-board finish is subpar nowadays. 100%. I would love to see a resurgence of lime plastering. It's nicer to work with. It's better for the buildings that you're using it on. And it's more universal. It opens the door for a lot more people to be able to get involved with it. And it sets slower. You can literally control the speed of the set. The problem with it is, in the UK, people have been that conditioned to the timing and the system of working with British gypsum products, multi-finish and board finish. I mean, look, this is how sort of like people are sort of pinned down. You can't even get a plasterer to change from multi-finish to board finish. Like, they won't even swap from one to the other. a lot of guys. They're like, no, no, I only use multi. I don't use board. It goes too fast. I mean, there's literally hardly any difference in it. You use exactly the same techniques and it sets within about 20 minutes difference, and you can't get fellas to change. I would love to see lime plastering make a massive comeback in this country, but if you can't even get someone to put board finish down and try multi or vice versa, what chance have we got for getting people to start using lime plaster, which is a whole different process, a whole different way of working? So that's what we're up against. But who knows in the future? I'd love to just do a whole series on just working with lime plaster. Chris Freestone. I learned to be ambidextrous because my frigging arms got tired. Yes. Yeah. Dave Smith. I tell you, my arms get tired. I'm all right doing ceilings and I'm all right doing walls. It's when you get in a funny angle, you've got to use different muscles. So above my head, fine. In front of me, fine. Sloped ceilings, they get me a little bit. But where it really gets you is if you're doing like an attic conversion and you've got to get right down, it slopes all the way down to the floor and you end up lying down, coming out sideways. It's like it's hitting different muscles. That's a killer. Sean White, my dad and I dot and dabbed a garage conversion. We've now got cracks where the wall and ceiling meet, as well as some vertical seams. Any advice? Okay. So what were the spans on the joists? Were the spans, sort of 400 or 600, or were they a lot bigger? What's the garage built from? Is it a prefab concrete garage? Is it, is it moving? Have you dabbed straight onto a single skin wall? You have to give me a bit more context, mate. Matthew, chat going too fast, mate. It's too fast for me anyway. I'm a simple guy, aren't I? So I can't read that quick. Andy B, 1088. When's the bathroom going to be finished? Right, basically, that is pretty much done. I've got a few finishing touches to do in there, and then it's finished. But I can't really release the video until it is finished. And I've got loads of other content that I've had to put out and things to do. So that one's just on hold for a minute. But that will be finished soon because we are potentially going to be moving house. And that will have to be done before we go anywhere. So, yeah, we'll just see. We'll just see. That, well, saying potentially moving house, that sort of went a little bit belly up last week because how's this? We were bidding on a property, not on an auction, because you'd think that's where you go to bid, but you actually bid on every property, apparently. So the seller puts it up and you say, I will give you the asking price, but no, they're going to wait and see if they get a better offer. So everything's an auction, basically. And the only thing with when you don't go to an auction is you don't actually know what the highest bid is because the estate agents they like you to bid blind. They like you to not know what anybody else is bidding, so that rather than beating a bid by 1,000 or 5,000 quid, you could potentially go in 20 or 30 grand more, couldn't you, if you really like the place, and then they make more money, which is wonderful for them but horrendous for everybody else. So we actually got gazumped by somebody that was bidded less than us. We were the highest bidders. Work that out. Well, I'll tell you how it panned out. We were the highest bidder, but the other people were cash buyers. They literally had the money in their bank. I mean, how people have that amount of money just squirreled away is beyond me. Because I know if I had that much money in the bank account, my missus would find things to spend it on. But anyway, they because they were a cash buyer, they could move fast. So the money could be like in the seller's bank account by the end of the week after. Whereas with me, I'd have to get the mortgage and then it could still fall through and then they could miss out on the cash buyer. So I get why it happened, but it's still frustrating when yeah. Anyway, no use crying over spilt milk. Jerry, open, honest and truthful. Yeah, some things we can't talk about, but I try and be. Squilly, one. I've watched many, many hours of your videos, Kirk, and I'm yet to put the knowledge learned to the trowel. Need to soon, though, as I've a couple of bags of multi-finish that only have 3 weeks left before expiry. Yes, get started, mate. Look, to be fair, you can use finishing plaster slightly out of date. I mean, I've used finishing plaster a year out of date. It's not fun. It actually is horrible to use, but it is possible. But if you want to give yourself the best chance, go and get some brand new fresh gear, because even when it's getting close to the date, it starts to get horrible to use. It sort of like goes greasy and difficult to work with. So the fresher the stuff, the better, really. BR Aki. Kirk, I'm someone who spent his whole career internal. How long will it take to learn modern and traditional rendering to a good standard? Thank you. Mate, you've already got the skills. It's literally, if you can already use a handboard, hawk and trowel, you can already use the tools and get it on the wall, then that's it. So it's just understanding the principles. You know, it's you've got it's not gonna, basically you could learn from a textbook now to do the external stuff because you've already got the skills. It's just a case of applying them in a different area. So it's just understanding the setting times and all the rest of it of whatever material you want to work with. So it's not even a case of it's going to take you a long time to learn, mate. You know, if you could already plaster, go and jump in with someone on a rendering job. Just say, I'll come and help you for free for one day, you know, or on that job. I'll just jump in and help you. It's going to take you 2 or 3 days, and then you're going to be up to speed with whatever type of rendering they do, it being sand and cement, be it dashing, monocouche, thin coat, whatever, you know, you'll pick it up like that. Kevin Sexton, the daughter's bedroom gets black mold on the ceiling. The finish in the room is skim coat. Would you recommend to plaster over it with cork plaster? If the daughter's ceiling is getting black mold, it is more than likely because it is the coldest part of the room. So you're getting condensation on the ceiling. That, unless you've got a leak, if you've got a leak, basically black, you're going to get mold wherever there's presence of moisture. So if it's leaking, you're going to get mold. If it's not leaking and it's cold, you're going to get condensation. So rather than skimming it now, look at trying to insulate it from above. You know, make sure it's well insulated, and then get rid of the mold with some white vinegar, or you know, you can go and buy some stuff to kill the mold, and then you should be able to just decorate, really. You know, you could plaster over it if you really wanted to, but ultimately it's just a case of warming that spot up. But then ultimately, the other thing you want to take into account, sorry, let's not just leave it like that, because there'd be people in the comments now like, no, do this. Right. You got to think as well, if you insulate that, somewhere else in the room is going to be the next cold spot. It's usually your window. That's why your window usually condenses. But now we've got double glazing and stuff, so the cold spot moves. So now, you know, the moisture's accumulating somewhere else. If you ventilate the room, then the moisture can just get out into the cold air and be gone. So if you put a vent in, as well as insulating, that's going to be better. Put the windows on a trickle vent, maybe, you know, draft lock on the windows so that the moisture can escape out the room and insulate everywhere else. That's going to be the best bet, mate. Darren, the big man, is one of the best tradesmen out there. Top grafter. Love watching and learning from you. Dazza, Glasgow. Cheers, Dazza. Thank you very much, mate. Pixel Pusher. Daughter got 3 quotes for hallway plastering to walls and ceiling. Walls on Artex. Went with the middle quote. Final result was rough with Artex still showing through. Plaster coming back to sort. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, the price doesn't reflect the skill level of the plasterer. I know fellas that are fantastic plasterers, but they've got in their mind that their rate is less because maybe they've worked on a building site. They've just, for instance, what you find is most lads that work on site and they used to work in price per square meter usually end up being quite cheap because they have it in their mind that, you know, like a room is only worth 100 quid because that's what they're getting paid on the building sites, you know, like because they're working for, I don't know, £3 a meter or whatever. So that when they come doing domestic work, they usually end up quite cheap, but they're usually quite good plasterers. But then you get some plasterers that have always done domestic work their whole lives, and they might not necessarily be good, but they've caught on out of price, so they can end up being quite expensive for crap. So you can't judge the quality by the price. Unfortunately, you've got to do your due diligence and ask for recommendations from people that have actually had these people work for them. And I would have no problem with if someone phoned me up and wanted a job doing, and they said, "Kirk," like imagine they didn't know we were. Imagine I wasn't on YouTube. If they said to me, "Kirk, any chance, mate, over the next week or two, if we give you a call and just come out and see you on one of your jobs and just see how the job's going, see how you run the job," I'd have no problem with that. Some guys make, it all depends on the customer. Look, if your customer's okay with it, just say, if your customer's okay with it, could have come out and see you on one of your jobs and just see what's going on, how you get on. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If somebody did have a problem with it, maybe ask like why are they worried about you seeing them working? Because then at least you've got a bit of an insight to how they're going to be in your home. You know, you could potentially go and see work that they've previously done. Just options, aren't they? I don't want to really I'm saying this, but also on the other side of it, I don't want to upset all the tradesmen. Go, no, don't tell them to do that. But I'm just thinking, what I wouldn't have a problem if someone said to me, Kurt, we're going to pay you X amount of money to do all this work. Any chance before you start, though, mate? We like you and that, but any chance we could go and see any of your previous jobs? Have you got anything you've done recently that we could go and have a look at? I'd have no problem just phoning a customer from last week. Any chance these can just pop in and see what the work is? Comes, see what I've done. I don't think many people would have an issue with that. So anyway, I'm going on quite a lot about that. Cardano. Question 2. Is bonding coat suitable for small repairs on wooden lath and lime plaster walls? Will it adhere properly to the wooden lath? Yes, but it's not ideal. It will work, but it's not ideal. With whatever plastering system you've currently got, it is best to continue with that system. So if the walls are sand and cement, it's best to repair them with sand and cement. If the walls are lime, it's better to repair them with lime, and so on and so forth. Will bonding work in that situation? Yeah. The idea of it is, don't just put a little tight coat on it. The way the laths work, you've got to push the stuff in so it mushrooms over the back, but push it in too far, and there'll be too big of a mushroom at the back, and it'll all drop off. Imagine these are the laths. You want the plaster to sort of come through and just like make a little mushroom shape on the back and just ooze there. If you push loads in and it all drops off, it's not actually keyed. So it's just a case of putting it on with enough pressure to push some through. The laths, you'll get a better bond to them if they are sealed, because they're dry. They're going to be bone dry now, and they're going to suck the moisture out your plaster. So you're better off sealing them a little bit first. I mean, it will work. It's just not textbook. Patrick Lawrence. Hi, Kirk. Will standard SBR... Oh, here we go. Will standard SBR give good adhesion to moisture-resistant paints, or would something else be required to give a good key? So, I'm not a painter and decorator, but one thing I do know, when you say moisture-resistant paints, anything waterproof, vinyl silk paint, bathroom paint, kitchen paint, all these types of paints, if you put them directly onto fresh plaster, in my experience, I'm not a painter and decorator, but just what I've seen, they peel off, they flake off, or they peel off in sheets. Unless you put a coat on first of something like matte paint, an emulsion that soaks into the plaster. I can only go off what I've seen people do. So when I used to work on the building sites, the painters and decorators would sort of water down the first coat, give it a mist coat of emulsion, and then the bathroom paint would go on top of that, and it would be fine. That's only my opinion. There's probably painters and decorators in the comment that'd be like, give you better advice, mate, but just what I've seen. Anytime you put vinyl silk or bathroom paint onto fresh plaster, it usually always goes wrong. Further down the line, it starts flaking off or peeling off. Using SBR, I don't know. Is the honest answer. I don't know. fantastic rectangles. Do you know any top plasterers who got into the trade a bit later on, like not straight from school, college? How long does it take to master? Right. Yes. One of my dad's good mates, Brian Griffiths, a fella from Wallasey, um, played a little part in teaching me for a while. He was a self-taught plasterer, taught himself and then worked alongside other plasterers and sort of like perfected his skills. And he started a little bit later on in life. I think he was in his 30s when he started. Very good plasterer. It's anything. It's like anything else. It's a skill, isn't it? It. You can't learn plastering from a book. You can learn a lot of the principles, but it's a skill you've got to practice with your hands. And like anything, some people will naturally pick it up faster than others. The same as some people will naturally jump on a bloody unicycle and be able to ride that, and some people it'll take 5 years to be able to master. Some people just pick it up easier than others, and I believe though that if anybody puts enough time and effort into learning a skill, regardless of what it is, if you're determined in your heart that you're not going to give up, then you're going to master it, aren't you? You know, isn't there a thing where like you become an expert at anything if you give 10,000 hours to it or something like that? I'm sure I've read that somewhere. So yeah, look, it's obtainable. It's obtainable to be able to do it at any age, really, if you put enough time and effort into it. I just wouldn't recommend going and working on building sites if you're in your 50s and you're starting out, because it'll probably kill you, you know. Hence, I don't work. I've stopped working on building sites when I was in my 20s, and I never ever want to go back again either. Uh, Peter Dulson, one of the few plasterers that has the knowledge and deep understanding of what you're actually doing. So many are just skimmers who only understand PVA skim plasterboard. Thank you, mate. Appreciate you saying that. I don't claim to know everything. I know what I know, but I also am aware of what I don't know. Plastering is one of them things that I don't think you ever stop learning. Like, there's literally just there's so much to it. And what's interesting is we think we've actually progressed with plastering, and the more you look what they did in history, the more you start to see that we've actually decreased in knowledge over time. We've sort of de-skilled rather than upskilled, you know. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, you start learning about, I don't know, the Romans waterproofing aqueducts with basically fat, animal fat in the plaster. And what's interesting is if you look at the chemicals that we put in our waterproofing sand and cements, it's the same, it's a synthetic version of that. It's quite interesting that what was common practice years and years ago then gets what's the word? Synthesized? No, a synthetic version brought out and patented. And then after long enough, people forget the original way of doing it, you know. It's probably going to happen soon, because at the minute, there's a load of fellas that know how to mix sand and cement or sand and lime, and you can add pigments. You can use white cement and, you know, silver sand and pigments and make coloured renders. That's common knowledge. There's loads of fellas that do that still. But if we carry on using monocouche renders long enough and sand and cement is sort of done away with, eventually everyone will forget how to mix sand and cement, and then it'll just be modern bagged renders, because that's all they basically are. You know, it's what you're buying is pretty much like a 4-to-1 mix with a few different additives chucked in there. And if you actually knew what was in the bag, you could just make it yourself, you know. Chris Lishy. Or it's double L. If it's the Welsh way, it's Cleshy. Chris Cleshy or Chris Leshy. Anyway, should I look into getting into plastering at 20? Yeah. 20's fine. All you've got to remember is the only thing when you get into plastering, anything, it's like getting into any trade, unfortunately, the way that the pay is structured, because everybody's self-employed, and a lot of people, you know, they're all on price work, unless you're employed by a company and you get a set salary and that's it. The problem you're getting is when you are trying to learn from someone, they are literally paying you out of their own wages. Like if I took a young lad on with me now, I can do my job without that lad. So when I take him on, he's not making me any faster. In fact, he's slowing me down because I've got to slow down what I'm doing to teach him. So I'm paying him out of my wages and he's making me slower at the same time. So that being known, what you've got to take into account is the older you get, the more life gets a grip of you. You know, like at 16, you've maybe got your mobile phone bill and you've got to give your mum a few quid, you know, and you buy a bottle of White Lightning at the weekend. So your expenses are quite low. So it's very easy for you to go and work for peanuts for someone and learn. When you get to 20, maybe you've got, you know, car insurance, phone bills, rent, and maybe a child to pay for. So then it starts to become more difficult for you to get into the trade because somebody else might only be able to afford to give you, you know, this a day and you need this. So that's the difficult bit. But there's ways around it, you know. Do a normal job through the week and work for a plasterer on the weekend and get your skills up until the point where you're not slowing him down and you're making him faster. Once you can mix plaster without him having to supervise you, then you can start making him faster. If you're actively looking at things and ways to clean up, keep everywhere spotless, you're actually helping the guy, then your money can start to go up sooner. But initially when you start, you're sort of in the way, making a mess, making things worse for him initially, you know. But if you can do that on the weekends, whilst you're still getting paid somewhere else, then it's going to be a lot easier for you. Ex-friend, you can't you just give yourselves Google names that are easy to read? I'm flipping. Kirk, I don't get your plaster. I used Unifloat here in Germany. Oh, this makes sense. Okay, it's a German word. Sorry, mate. Kirk, I don't get your plaster. I used Uniflex here in Germany. Have you worked with it? I haven't, unfortunately. No, I've not done any plastering in Germany. France, Switzerland, none in Germany as of yet. It's all pretty similar, just different methods. You know, yeah, you boys do a lot of sort of one coat stuff, ruling off and sponging up and sanding, and I don't know. I'm probably completely wrong. There's all types of different plaster that you potentially will have used. So there's lots of different processes, I suppose. I'm not scared to try anything now. I'll have a go at anything. I think once this is what I was saying before to another guy. Once you've got the basic skills of being able to use plastering tools, you can apply that to literally any type of plaster. You just need to get up to. You just need to spend a day with the fellows that are using that type of plaster to get you up to speed. To go, this is the process. You know, whereas I'm used to laying on my first coat, making sure it's on within 30 minutes. My second coat on with 30 minutes. That's the 1 hour of getting it on and laid down, flattened in, and troweled up in 2.5 hours. That's the process that I'm used to working to. Different setting times, different thicknesses. You know, it's not rocket science. It just takes a little bit of spending a day doing it with somebody that knows what they're doing with that product, and then you're away. Ian Watson, can you use SBR to plaster over painted walls to fill patches where plaster has fallen off and then someone repainted the wall? Yes, mate, 100% you can. Yes. Andrew Pugh, I have a bath that's leaked through my kitchen ceiling. I've used various paints to seal the stain, but I want to get rid of the Artex. Can I just plaster over it? And what products should I use? Yes, mate. I would personally SBR the whole ceiling and skim over it. Now, some people disagree with me and say it should always overboard an Artex ceiling. And the reason they say that is because they've had a ceiling fall down in the past. That's 99% of the reason why they say that. And what you will find is in older buildings, things that are built sort of. Oh, I had a little tap on my office window there. Food has arrived. But I'll tell you this quick. What you find is older buildings where there's lime plaster, you will find lime wash paint, right? If you rub it, it leaves like chalky dust on your hand, right? A lot of older ceilings have got lime wash paint on them if it's an older building. Artex will go over the top of that, no problem, because it's very lightweight. If you add plaster to the Artex, it can potentially pull it all down. So all you need to do is just get a little wallpaper scraper, and then this is going to upset a whole different bunch of people now. But if you have a little scrape at the Artex and it comes off really easy, then you've got to look at, okay, we're not going to be able to plaster onto this because it's going to fall down. So you can either overboard it or scrape the lot off and stabilize the background of a stabilizing solution. Now, if you're going to do that, to keep the health and safety guys really happy, make sure you put on a full suit, breathing mask, and open the windows, because the Artex may contain asbestos. And if it contains asbestos, it'll contain between 2 and 6% white asbestos, which, interestingly enough, the health and safety executive in the UK has deemed it safe enough for you to remove yourself. A householder can remove Artex by themselves, which is interesting because any other type of Artex, any other type of asbestos, sorry, blue asbestos, brown asbestos, all the different types, you need to have a license to remove it. A licensed contractor has to remove all the other different types of asbestos. But when it comes to white asbestos, which is the asbestos present in Artex, the health and safety executive basically say that your grandma can remove it. Okay. And all you've got to do is wear a mask when you're doing it, well ventilated area. And if you pull it all down, you've got to wrap it up in visqueen, double bag it, and take it to a disposal centre. There's a lot of council tips that will take it. They've got an asbestos bin, and you can go and pop it in there. But you've got to wet it and wrap it up twice, 2 lots of visqueen, basically, and then you're good to go. Interestingly enough, as well, white asbestos is pretty much present in loads of stuff. So, for instance, because I don't want to say something and you go, oh, well, that's not a good thing to recommend. But I've denibbed hundreds of Artex ceilings that are asbestos. Now, I'm not recommending you go and do this, but ultimately there was white asbestos in brake pads of cars. So there could be someone saying to me, oh, you shouldn't do that, Kirk. You know, and I've denibbed one ceiling, right? And they're super healthy, cycling to work. Like, they don't put it in brake pads no more, but they would be cycling down the road, and as cars are braking, they're breathing in more asbestos than what I would have been driving to work in my van, you know, eating a pie and denibbing one ceiling. So, yeah, I'm not sort of trying to downplay its dangerousness, but, you know, it's like there's a whole industry built out of the fear of this asbestos, which will kill you if you start inhaling it on purpose. But anyway, I'm waffling. I'm going. My food's here. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Sorry I've had to cut it short. I wasn't expecting my good lady to come home so fast with a meal, so I'm going to go and tuck into my takeaway. Take it easy, guys. Good night. God bless.